You're sitting at dinner with 3 friends, and the bill comes, and someone says, "Let's just split it evenly." And you smile and say sure, even though you got the salad and a water and everyone else got appetizers, 2 drinks, and dessert. You do the math in your head anyway. You can't help it. And then later that night, you get a Venmo request for $23 from your roommate for something you don't even remember buying. And you transfer it, and you check your balance right after, just to see where you stand. Sound familiar? Here's the thing almost nobody tells you. There's a specific number that changes this entire experience. And it's not 6 figures. It's not $50,000. It's not even $20,000. It's $5,000. And once you hit it, something shifts that has nothing to do with how much stuff you can buy. Most financial influencers will tell you that you need a 6-figure salary to feel secure, or that until you've got 50 grand invested, you're basically starting from zero. But here's what they're missing. There's a much smaller number that acts like a tripwire for your entire financial identity. And almost nobody talks about it because it's not flashy enough to get clicks. And why women in particular get handed either oversimplified advice or advice that assumes you're already starting from a 6-figure salary and a paid-off car. If you're in your 20s and you feel like you're constantly behind, constantly comparing your bank account to everyone else's Instagram, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you see your own numbers differently. Before we get into the content of this video, I want to note that all information in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. Always consult with a qualified professional before making any decisions regarding your money. Now, let's get into the video. Now, before we get into why $5,000 is the real turning point, let me ask you something. When you picture being financially secure, what comes to mind? Probably not $5,000 sitting in a savings account. Probably some distant future version of yourself who has her life together in a way that feels impossible right now. But that's exactly the trap. You're comparing yourself to a finish line that's decades away, instead of noticing the actual threshold that's sitting right in front of you. Here's what's really going on. There are certain dollar amounts that act like invisible tripwires in your financial life. Cross them, and the rules of the game change. $5,000 is the first one. It's the threshold that separates the version of you who's constantly reacting to money emergencies from the version of you who's actually building something. And almost nobody talks about it because it's not a big enough number to make headlines. Think about it like this. Imagine you're trying to push a shopping cart with a wonky wheel across a gravel parking lot. That's what managing money with zero savings feels like. Every push takes effort, the cart keeps veering off in the wrong direction, and you're exhausted before you've even gotten anywhere. But once you get that cart onto smooth pavement, everything changes. Less effort, more progress, and suddenly you're moving in a straight line. $5,000 is the moment your financial cart hits the pavement. But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is the part that actually surprised me when I dug into the research. The difference isn't just about having a cushion. It's not simply that you have a little extra money sitting around. The real shift happens in your brain. When you have zero savings, your brain treats every financial decision like a threat. Psychologists call this scarcity mindset. And it's not a character flaw. It's a survival response. You take the job that pays less because you need income now. You stay in the apartment with the mold problem because moving costs money you don't have. You say yes to things you don't actually want to do because saying no feels too risky. This isn't about being bad with money. It's about your brain not having the bandwidth to think past this week. Something changes when you cross that $5,000 line. Research from Vanguard found that having just $2,000 in savings increases financial well-being by 21%. $2,000. That's less than what a lot of people spend on their engagement ring alone. But that small buffer moves you out of pure survival mode. Push it further, up toward $5,000, which for most early career women covers somewhere between 1 and 2 months of core living expenses, and you get another meaningful jump in that same research. More importantly, you've created just enough breathing room for your brain to stop asking, "How do I survive this week?" and start asking, "How do I build something?" Let's actually break down what $5,000 covers, because this is where the number stops being abstract and starts being real. A minor car repair, the kind that used to send you into a spiral, typically runs somewhere between $300 and $800. Covered. easily, without touching a credit card. A broken laptop, which for a lot of women in their 20s is also how they make their income, runs somewhere around $600 to $1,200 for something reliable. Covered. A month of rent if you suddenly lost your job, which is genuinely one of the scariest scenarios for anyone under 30, is very often covered entirely by this number, sometimes with room to spare depending on your city. A dental emergency, a security deposit on a better apartment, a plane ticket home for a family emergency, all of it sits comfortably inside this number. And here's the part that's easy to miss. It's not that $5,000 solves every problem you'll ever have, it's that it solves almost every problem that would have otherwise become a full-blown crisis. That's the actual function of this number. It's not wealth, it's a shock absorber. Let's talk about the actual math, because this is where it gets exciting. Say you're 24, making the median entry-level salary for a college graduate, and you manage to save $300 a month. That's not nothing, but it's also not some extreme sacrifice. At that rate, saving $300 a month with a modest return sitting in a high-yield savings account, you hit $5,000 in a little under 14 months, a little over a year of consistency. That's it. That's the whole climb. And here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. Your second $5,000 doesn't take as long, because now that first $5,000 is sitting there earning its own return, working alongside your monthly contributions. You're doing the exact same amount of saving, the exact same discipline, but the timeline shrinks. That's compound interest starting to show up, even at this small scale. Let's meet Maya. Maya is 26, works in marketing, makes $52,000 a year, and for most of her early 20s had exactly $400 in her checking account and nothing else. Every time her car needed an oil change, it felt like a crisis. Every time a friend suggested a weekend trip, she had to quietly do math before saying yes. Maya started putting $250 a month into a separate savings account. Not because some finance guru told her to, but because she was tired of feeling like she was one flat tire away from disaster. 16 months later, she hit $5,000. And here's what she told me changed. It wasn't that she suddenly felt rich. $5,000 doesn't buy a house or fund a retirement. What changed was that the next time her car needed a repair, it was annoying, not terrifying. The next time a friend mentioned a trip, she could actually consider it instead of immediately saying no. The next time her lease was up for renewal and her rent went up $200, she had room to negotiate instead of panicking. There's something else that happened to Maya that she almost didn't mention, because she didn't think it was related to her savings account at all. About a year after she crossed $5,000, a coworker casually mentioned that a friend of hers was starting a small business and looking for someone to help part-time on weekends for extra pay. The old version of Maya, the one with $400 to her name, would have said, "That sounds cool," and moved on, because taking on anything new felt like an unnecessary risk when every hour of her time was already spoken for by survival. But the version of Maya with a cushion said yes. It turned into an extra $600 a month, which she funneled straight back into savings, which meant her next $5,000 came even faster than the first. This is the part almost nobody talks about. The money doesn't just protect you from bad things. It opens you up to good things you would have been too scared to say yes to otherwise. Now, you might be thinking that real financial security requires way more than $5,000. And you're right, it does. But here's what almost nobody explains. $5,000 isn't the finish line. It's the moment the ground under you stops shifting. It's the difference between building your financial life on sand and building it on something solid enough to actually construct on top of. Once you have that foundation, the next milestone comes faster, and the one after that comes faster still, because you're no longer starting from zero every single time something goes wrong. Here's something else that shifts at this level, and it's honestly the part that matters most. You start caring less about the small stuff and more about the big stuff. When you have nothing saved, every purchase feels loaded. Should I get the $7 latte or make coffee at home? Can I justify ordering delivery tonight? These questions eat up mental energy because every dollar feels precious. But once you have that $5,000 buffer, you realize those micro decisions were never the real problem. The $4 you save skipping a coffee here and there adds up to maybe a few $100s a year. What actually moves the needle is your rent, your student loan strategy, whether you're negotiating your salary, and whether you're investing at all. Once your foundation is solid, your brain finally has room to focus on the decisions that are actually worth the mental energy, instead of agonizing over a latte. This mental shift has a name, by the way. Researchers who study poverty and financial stress call it cognitive bandwidth. Studies on this topic have found that financial scarcity can consume so much mental energy that it measurably affects decision-making. In the same way that being seriously sleep-deprived does, you are not less capable or less disciplined than someone with more savings than you. Your brain is simply running an enormous background process dedicated entirely to threat detection. And that process shuts off, or at least quiets down significantly, once you've got a real buffer between you and disaster. This is not a metaphor. This is a documented, measurable shift in how your brain allocates its own resources. And this shows up at work, too, which is something almost nobody connects to a savings number. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you cannot afford to push back on anything. You take whatever raise they offer, because a small raise still feels better than none. You don't ask for the promotion, because rocking the boat feels dangerous when you need every paycheck to land on time. But $5,000 gives you what I call quiet leverage. It's not enough to quit your job and disappear for 6 months, but it's enough that if a conversation with your manager goes badly, you're not going to fall apart financially. That tiny shift in your own head changes how you show up in that negotiation. You ask for the raise you actually deserve, because the absolute worst case scenario is survivable. People who negotiate from a place of quiet confidence get better outcomes than people negotiating from a place of desperation, consistently. This isn't a coincidence, it's psychology. Quiet leverage shows up outside of work too. It shows up when a friendship or a relationship stops feeling healthy, and you actually have the option to create some distance, instead of staying because you can't afford not to. It shows up when a landlord tries to push through an unreasonable rent increase, and you can actually consider walking away instead of just absorbing it. Financial security doesn't just protect your bank account. It protects your ability to make choices based on what's actually good for you, instead of what you can technically survive. But here's where I need to be honest with you, because this is the part where a lot of women get this exact milestone and then undo it almost immediately. You hit $5,000, and it feels like an accomplishment, which it genuinely is. And then the temptation shows up. Maybe it's a trip you've been eyeing. Maybe it's finally upgrading your wardrobe for a new job. Maybe it's just the psychological relief of finally having a cushion. So you let your spending creep back up because you feel like you've earned a break. I get the impulse completely. After months of discipline, spending some of it doesn't feel reckless. It feels deserved. And to be clear, this isn't about never spending money on yourself again for the rest of your life. That's not sustainable, and it's not the point. But that $5,000 isn't a reward. It's a foundation. It's the first layer of concrete. And if you pour it and then immediately chip pieces off of it, you're never going to be able to build the next floor on top of it. The women who actually turn this milestone into long-term security are the ones who protect it, keep contributing past it, and let it start compounding instead of treating it like found money. There's a specific pattern I want to warn you about, because I've seen it play out over and over. Someone hits $5,000, dips into it for something non-essential, drops back down to $3,000, feels discouraged, and stops contributing altogether for months because the momentum feels broken. The truth is, dipping into it once isn't the problem. The problem is treating that dip as proof that saving doesn't work for you and giving up entirely. The number isn't magic on its own. What's actually powerful is the habit of protecting it and rebuilding it every single time life pulls a little out. That habit is worth more than the $5,000 itself, because that habit is what gets you to the next milestone and the one after that. Let's go back to that dinner table for a second. The one from the very beginning of this video. Picture the version of you sitting there with $5,000 saved instead of nothing. The bill comes. You still notice what everyone ordered in wine because you're a normal person who likes being fair, but it doesn't feel like a threat anymore. That Venmo request for $23 doesn't make your stomach drop. It's just a number. That's the actual transformation. Not a mansion, not a designer bag, not some dramatic lifestyle upgrade. Just the quiet absence of that low-grade financial anxiety that's been sitting in the background of every single decision you've made for years. Here's the truth about why nobody talks about this specific number. $5,000 isn't exciting enough to build a personality around. It won't make you a millionaire by 30. It won't get you into some exclusive investing conversation. But it is, mathematically and psychologically, the single most important number most women in their 20s will ever save. Because it's the number that determines whether every financial decision after this point comes from a place of fear or a place of strategy. You are not behind because you don't have $50,000 saved by 26. You are not behind because your friend's parents helped with her down payment and yours didn't. You are not behind because someone in your group chat is posting from a vacation you couldn't afford. Comparison will keep you anxious forever if you let it set the terms. The number that actually matters right now, the one that will change how every future dollar behaves, is 5,000. Start there. Protect it once you have it, and let your future self take it from here.